They're finally here. The Canon R5 and R6. Some of the greatest cameras we've seen to date. Insane specs. Is it the grail? Is it everything we've asked for? Little backstory. I was a Canon shooter when I first started getting into cameras. And I quickly wanted to get more into video. I wanted to get into 4K video because this was around the time 4K video was becoming a little bit bleeding edge. It wasn't, as prominent as today, but the only cameras that were doing this at the time were these Sony cameras, and they were just jumping into the mirrorless scene. My first foray into Sony was an A6000, which now I use pretty much a webcam, and I really enjoyed it, but I quickly grew to find its limitations, the overheating issues, the issues with IBIS, the issues with autofocus. Fast forward till today, I still shoot Sony. I have the Sony A6000 here. My B camera is a Sony A7R III. I also own an RX100 Mark IV. I also was using the A7S II for years before I upgraded to the R3. I've been embedded in Sony since they started their mirrorless journey, and I actually really enjoyed their ecosystem. And it's an affordable camera ecosystem. It's not crazy expensive like how Canon was to get into more of the higher end stuff. They really had that cripple hammer going when the reign of Sony was going on. Canon was just a very conservative, very expensive brand at the time, and that allowed Sony and Fuji and Panasonic to really pick up the slack. Because remember, this was all right after the 5D2 market, which Canon reigned in, and then after that, they kind of fell by the wayside, letting all these mirrorless cameras have come up. Now, there were a lot of limitations that Sony had that really made me look at other camera markets. Of course, Panasonic for video, and then Canon for a lot of the hybrid stuff. I am a hybrid shooter. I need my cameras to be hybrid. So when the EOS R first came out, I was disappointed in the specs, the huge crap on 4K, just the limiting sort of conservative, crippling Canon system going on. But what I did see was a start of a new Canon. It was mainly because the camera was Canon's look into the mirrorless market. It was them agreeing that Sony had a great place in the camera world and they were going to start to compete in it. And I didn't pick up my EOS R, which I have right here, until maybe a little bit later after its release. And once I did, it quickly became the camera that I used the most. It quickly became the hybrid that I use the most for really just a couple simple things. And one of them being the great usability of it. It's just a great body, as well as the flip screen. I do a lot of videos like this where I need to see myself, not really a vlogger. I just need to see myself. I just like to have the monitoring stuff because I do film myself a lot. But again, the EOS R had a lot of specs that were left out that was far from the camera that I needed or the camera that I wanted. The crop on 4K was unacceptable. The only high frame rate they had was 120 at 720p. But ever since I had the Sony A7S II, these were the specs that I wanted. I wanted at least 4K, 60 frames per second for some some slow motion when I need it. I wanted a flip out screen. I wanted this camera to have IBIS. I wanted this camera to have a reliable autofocus system. I wanted this camera to have a really great lens lineup. And I wanted this camera to utilize USB-C. I thought USB-C, being able to connect your camera to your computer with just one wire, not having to worry about popping things out, utilizing it as a webcam. I always find that USB-C is overlooked as a great spec. So now we come to the R5 and the R6. And when these camera specs came out, I was very skeptical, as were many other people. We were wondering what was Canon doing to cripple these cameras. But looking at the specs, it was my grail camera. It's the camera that I've been waiting for the longest time, since the A7S II. Looking at the footage from Peter McKinnon, and there's some other sample footage from other YouTubers out there that have had the camera early, international users, and I suggest you go take a look at it. Maybe I'll leave a couple links in the description. But the IBIS looks incredible. The autofocus looks like it's like top tier autofocus, best in class. Colors are always looking great. All C-Log. But then there were some other things. 10-bit internal 422. No crop, of course. Flip out screen, great ergonomics. A new battery, great battery life. Those were the specs that I needed. Those were the specs that I wanted. And we got that and some with the R5 coming out, saying that there's going to be an 8K recording mode as well as 4K 120, which I didn't expect to see anytime soon. 4K 120. To throw it in here on top of these other specs was just like the cherry on top. Now we cut to the cripple. Of course, a lot of the big concerns that people are having is with overheating me being a Sony shooter for so long, overheating was the most infuriating thing ever. It was something that you had to work around as a Sony user, and it's gotten a lot better over time, but I've had my Sony a7R III overheat while I'm in the studio shooting under studio light. It's a limitation I don't want to deal with. So then I look at the R6. The R6 seems to have all those specs that I need, right? 4K 60, IBIS, autofocus, flip out screen, great body. But they say the only shooting mode is the highly compressed IPB shooting mode in all modes. And I was like, okay, that makes sense because this is a $2,500 camera. It's got all those great specs. Of course, they're going to give some sort of cripple, some sort of like natural cripple on the camera, the IPB being whatever. But then the news came out that they are going to be adding a firmware update, adding all eye to the camera system. So this has come out of Canon rumors, and it's been shown on EOS HD. Rumored for the R5, you're getting full HD 120. You're adding low bitrate in RAW modes and IPB in all recording modes, C-Log 3. That's excellent. People were wondering why there's no 120 in full HD. Well, now you get it. And then here you can see the rumored EOS R6 firmware updates, adding all eye for all recording modes, Canon C-Log 3. Once I saw that, I said, okay, this is a much better offering for my needs at almost half the price, right? At almost half the price. I mean, the last maybe 4 years have been disappointing camera releases. A camera will have great IBIS. A camera will have great image quality. It will have 4K 10-bit internal. It will have 60 frames per second internal, but it will have an unusable autofocus system like we see with Panasonic. Fuji system has great color. They have pretty good autofocus. They have okay IBIS, but their limiting factor is that their lens lineup for video isn't that fleshed out, and they also don't have a full frame offering. You go over to Sony. Sony doesn't put flip screens on their cameras. Their bodies are just crap. I'd hate the feel of a Sony camera. Their menu systems are terrible. And with Canon, what we've seen so far is that they have great versatility, great usability, great lens lineup, great prestige, great ecosystem, but their 4K has been extremely limiting unless you wanted to jump to like the $6,000 1DX line, which doesn't even have a flip screen. I mean, it's got its own issues as well. So finally, and this is the point that I wanted to get across, finally, we get the Grail camera. We get the camera that has the well-rounded versatility we've all been waiting for. Now, the next thing I do want to get into is why I'm going with the R6 over the R5, and it's mainly because of that's just what I need. I really have no interest in 8K RAW recording at all. I am very interested in 4K 120. It is really a shame that the R6 doesn't have any sort of 4K 120, but I'm willing to go with 4K 60 at pretty much half the price, as well as just hearing from some of the YouTubers that have had the camera. They haven't had any issues with overheating in these cameras, probably because they are in that IPB lower data rate codec. Nonetheless, there's no worry there. There's just more reliability. It's also got a smaller sensor, so the low light is going to be better. It's just a better video centric camera for my needs. The only reason I was looking at the R5 was because it had all eye in all the modes and it had the 4K 120. And now it seems as if the all eye is coming to the R6. And I also want to point to a tweet that Gerald Undone, who is a great content creator, I'm sure you know him. Here's a tweet that he put out. I think the Canon R6 with the Ninja 5 is a better use of money than the R5, oversampled 4K 60 with unlimited recorded times and a terrific codec, while leveraging the better pricing of data SSDs over CF Express. If I had to give a recommendation on specs alone, that would be it. And that is the big thing. So when we price up the Canon R5, I need to get a CF Express card. I don't have any cameras that utilize that. I also need to get a CF card reader. That's like an extra $1,000 on top of the almost $4,000 for that camera. We're into like $5,000, $6,000 camera territory. Plus you want to get one of these new batteries. Plus you're probably going to get a grip. At least I always get a grip with my cameras. We're around $6,000 for this camera. That is cinema camera territory. And the R5, in my opinion, doesn't compete with like a C300, with a C200. So when I'm talking about like that hybrid mirrorless market, I beat up my cameras. I'm running and gunning with them all the time. They're always in the heat. They're always in the cold. There's just so much that these hybrid that I do with these hybrid cameras. Might as well go with the $2,500 one. I already got the Ninja 5 coming in. I actually don't have the Ninja 5. And I already have a ton of SSDs. It's just not that much of a price upgrade. So there we go. That's why I've already pre-ordered my R6. It's been the camera that I've been waiting for for about 5-6 years now, since the A7S II, and I cannot wait for it to get in here. I got my pre-order in a couple days ago, and it says it's not going to ship until September. I would imagine once reviews start coming out, these cameras are going to sell really, really quick. So what you can do is you can pre-order over at B&H or at Adorama, but they don't charge you until they ship the product. So you might want to get on that list. They do authorize it. So you might want to get on the list if you've been thinking about getting this camera, because these are going to be one of those cameras that I think are just going to sell like hotcakes, at least the R6s. Now, I want to see what Sony is going to release. I am not done with Sony. I think if Sony's A7S III can really compete with Canon on all those specs, meaning 4K 120, give me the flip screen, give me great body, give me a much better IBIS system. The IBIS looking off of these R cameras looks incredible. Look at Peter McKinnon's latest video. I want to see Sony compete with Canon on all of this other sort of like usability body stuff. Like get a new menu system. We've been talking about the menu system. How hard is it to implement a new menu system? I will happily cancel my pre-order for my Canon R6 if Sony does compete with these R cameras on some of these specs that I need. And most of them have to do with the body. I want to see the flip screen. I want to see a better body implementation. I want to see some other stuff because the specs are all there. I mean, I find the Sonys are great. I would like more of a higher codec. I would like more bitrate. I think that Sony's 4K is a little bit limiting on bitrate. Canon's 4K is like 3 times the size, and you can tell it looks really, really good when you compare it to Sony's. Nonetheless, I will happily cancel my pre-order and go with the Sony A7S III if it is that camera, if it is that good. We are in a very exciting time for cameras. I can't wait to see how these other companies react. I want to see what Panasonic does. I want to see what Fuji does. See, what's interesting about Fuji is they don't have a full frame equivalent, and unfortunately, I'm a full frame shooter. In fact, I've been looking more at the Fuji medium format sensors because I find that medium format just looks incredible, and I would love for Canon or Sony to release a media format camera, and I'm just excited to see what's next. This has been really fun, and seeing the rumors from Sony and then Canon has been a blast, and hopefully this momentum keeps up, and hopefully we get more lenses. Let's see more lenses. That's really what I want to see. Most of all, I want to see much more lenses. What is Nikon doing with their lenses? Let's see what Fuji's doing. Put out some great video zooms. Put out some great, have Sony put out some really interesting like art style lenses. Let's get that Sigma RF mount going. Let's get some of these lens lineups going to kind of push this forward. All right, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you leave a like and also subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. I'll catch you guys later. Peace.